My name is Peter Bezanson. That's the younger me from a few years ago at an informational meeting much like this. So what I want to do today is to talk about the first North Texas BASIS school. And I will go, there's a lot of information on this slide, on these slides. Feel free to bring a camera out and take pictures of the slides if you'd like, because I'm not going to touch on everything. There's a lot of detail. We'll have some detailed follow-up meetings where you can learn more about the curriculum. Today, I just kind of want to do some broad strokes on what BASIS is. Our goal for tonight is to get you guys excited enough about it as an option for your students, and I'll talk about the timing for that. For yourself as a career, if you've always wanted to be a teacher at a high-quality school or an administrator or in the operations. So for yourself as a possible employee, for your kids as possible students, to get you excited enough that you tell other people, because this will be the smallest informational meeting that we have. These initial informational meetings, almost sounds like Amway. I don't know if Amway still exists anymore, but these initial informational meetings lead to an early enrollment period that we'll talk about. So it's important for you to get involved early, to learn about when that early enrollment period is, to get friends and neighbors of your kids and yourself information about that early enrollment period. When we do this right, we fill the school 2/3 or so usually during that early enrollment period. So you don't have to worry too much about trying to get people interested in an early enrollment period, because most of our marketing takes place later on. So BASIS Benbrook Primary, we're opening August of 2022. As I talked about, we'll do an early open enrollment period coming soon, and we'll announce that over the next couple of months. We'll do a regular open enrollment period in the fall when we do our open enrollment for all of our charter schools across the country, and that's in the November-December timeframe. So this early open enrollment will be probably in September, possibly October. The specific location for the school will be announced later on in July. It is very close to here. It's not so close that you could, as I say, throw a rock and hit it, but it is close enough that at least as the crow flies, it's less than a kilometer away from here. The potential site, we haven't finalized the land, so I'm not telling you so that the owner doesn't decide that now he can charge us more money for it when we buy it. But we are close to finalizing that property. And Aaron, at the end of this presentation, will show you some schematics, some renderings, and then the floor plan for the building. We'll open with grades K through 5 in year number 1, and eventually grow through K through 12 by opening a grade level every year. And then we'll add a second campus. The campus that we're putting in Benbrook, this first campus on this first plot of land, will be a K through 5 school. It will add 6th grade and 7th grade to that campus before eventually down the road we will have the second campus, and then we'll have one K-5 and one 6 through 12. Or, as we do in many areas of the country, and I'll show you this in a second, 2 K-5s feeding into one 6-12. So it depends upon the demand here in the southwest Fort Worth area. And then there'll be these websites at the end, but if you go to basisbenbrookprimary.org, you can get on the interest list so you get all the information about the school as it happens. So before we do the nuts and bolts, I'll do kind of high-level philosophical stuff about BASIS charter schools. We have an essential mission, which is to not to transform American education. We don't necessarily believe we're here to solve a problem, but rather to operate the absolute top-performing schools in the country and in the world. There are some BASIS independent and BASIS international schools, so that we transform the educational quality for the students that we serve and get them into top-tier colleges and universities. We are, typically speaking, the top-performing schools in every metropolitan area where we operate. So we're the top-performing schools in Bexar County right now, which is where we started in Texas. We're the absolute top-performing schools in Arizona. We're among the top-performing schools, public charter schools, in the entire country. Depending upon what ranking you look at, we're either 5 of the top 7 or 10 of the top 10 or 11 of the top 13. Various rankings have us at various levels, but we are the absolute top-performing schools in the country. Absolutely the best network of schools, and then individual schools are up there in the rankings. The last bullet point on here is a really important one, and it kind of marries with this open enrollment idea. We have absolutely no admissions criteria whatsoever. You apply, you answer 4 or 5 questions that are basically where do you live and how old is your kid, and then we do lotteries, and if you get chosen off the lottery, and when we start brand new schools in places like Benbrook, we then tend to not have a lottery after that early enrollment period. That's the point of it, to get the people who most want to get into the school in. But if you get lucky off the lottery in later years, you get into the school. But it's a hard school. We have high-performing students. Your kid will be with other kids and your family with other families who are committed to a high-quality education and have made the commitment as a family to what it takes to support their kid in that high-quality education. We are, as we say a lot, we are for anyone who wants to give it a shot, but we are not for every family and not for every kid. Not everyone wants what we offer. Not everyone wants this sort of education. Not everyone wants to go eventually to a high school where the average student takes and passes 13 AP exams before they even get to 12th grade. So that's up to 11th grade, where kids are in, many of our kids are in pre-calculus in 8th grade and 9th grade. They're in calculus, AP calculus in 9th grade and 10th grade. A lot of these students are in neighborhoods where their friends are attending neighborhood schools where most kids don't take calculus at all, let alone every one of those kids taking calculus, most of them in 9th or 10th grade at the AP level. So we sometimes refer to ourselves somewhat egotistically as the Navy SEALs of education. But this last point, that we are for anyone who wants to give it a shot, but we're not for every family and not for every kid, is an important one to our mission. We do one thing and we do it really well. We have some core values. Number one, nerds are cool, which isn't to say that our schools are completely and entirely filled with nerds. Andrew Sturbin's in the back of the room is your classic example of a nerd. They don't all look like him. They don't all wear plaid with a blazer, but a lot of them do. We believe that schools should be hard, and we don't shy away from using that word. A lot of institutions, whether they're high schools or middle schools or primary schools, talk about how schools should be challenging, and they use that word because it's softer. But we fundamentally believe that school should be something that is difficult. That rising to a challenge is an important thing for a young man or young woman to reach for. And that rising for the challenge means that it has to be difficult. So we believe that school should be hard, and if it's easy, we should make it harder. Excellent teachers produce excellent student outcomes. We're committed to hiring fantastic teachers, but we're also committed to making sure that they produce excellent student outcomes. So we hire these great young men and women who come, a lot of them right out of bachelor's degrees and master's degrees. Many of them have no experience, or they come, and certainly no experience public school teaching. They'll come out of private school sometimes. We love those sorts of teachers because we can train them on how to be great teachers. I want to hire someone who really understands calculus and then help that teacher understand or get better at teaching calculus to high school students and middle school students. That's a little bit different at the primary school level. I'll talk in a little bit about our primary school model where we have 2 teachers in every primary school classroom. A lot of people have 2 teachers, not everyone, but a lot of people have 2 teachers in primary school classrooms. But we populate it with a early elementary expert teacher, someone who really understands child psychology and really understands how to teach kids on the one hand, and on the other hand, someone with deep subject knowledge. So your students in their math class in 2nd grade will have that 2-teacher model. Someone who understands kids really well and child education really well, and someone who understands mathematics really well. So in that case, we do hire teachers that have significant teaching experience when we're hiring those LET, the learning expert teachers. But we hold the teachers deeply and profoundly accountable for their results. As one example at the high school level, just one example of many in our organization, teachers are rewarded with performance-based pay based almost entirely on the student performance on objective examinations. So at the AP level, a teacher gets $200 for every student who gets a 5 on an AP exam that they teach. A teacher gets $100 for every student who gets a 4 on an AP exam. And a teacher gets nothing for a student who gets a 3 on an AP exam. So for us, we want to reward at the highest level with the most amount of money. And then but we don't want to reward mediocre outcomes. We don't want to reward simply satisfactory things. We want to reward truly exceptional performance. It also keeps teachers from explaining when we have a lot of kids in their class, because more kids means, to some degree, more money. And so having a teacher be directly attached to that idea, because there's no reasonable study out there. We don't have tons, so I don't want you to think we have 40, 50 kids in a class, but we do have between 25 and 32 kids in a classroom. There's not been any reasonable study that shows that class size makes a significant difference in the student academic outcomes. What is shown is that the quality of teachers makes a huge difference. So we hire great teachers, we expect great things out of them, we reward them when they do really well, and we terminate them if they don't. So we have no teacher contracts, we have no union, we are an at-will employer. We believe that the student should be participants in their education. You will notice when you come to BASIS that the teacher deals primarily with your kid at every grade level. Your student, you will not be able to access your kid's grades, for example. There's no online platform to access grades. You don't track your student performance on homework. You can't tell as a parent whether your kids on a day-to-day basis are doing their work and turning their homework in. The teacher's dealing with your kid. Now, obviously that's different in first grade than it is in sixth grade, than it is in high school. But our goal all along the way, from kindergarten through 12th grade, is student empowerment. And by the time your kid gets to high school, you will know very little about your kids' teachers. It's as if your kids are in college. That's the way it feels like to be a parent of a BASIS high school kid. You have a college student, you have a kid who's doing college level work, who's living at home, but they're dealing with their teachers like we dealt with our professors in college. That means they have to be empowered starting at a very young age. It doesn't take the responsibility off you as a parent. We tell you don't do your homework with your kid, but you have the responsibility for creating a lifestyle where your kids can do homework. Our homework is in kindergarten 20 or 30 minutes a night. By the time you get to the high school level, it's 2 to 3 hours a night. But a lot of our students work hard enough, and school is important enough to them that they get that homework done. It's out of class work more than it is homework. They'll come early to school and work. They work through their lunch with their peers. They stay after school and get the work done. So my own kid, I have one student who teaches at one of our schools. I have one daughter who teaches at one of our schools, and I have 2 kids in the schools currently, one in 11th grade, 12th grade next year, and one in 9th grade next year. Both of my kids typically do not come home with homework to do on a nightly basis, because they do it at lunch and after school before I pick them up after the late bird program, the after school program. We've been doing this a long time, and we have a lot of success, and I'll show you the evidence of that in a minute. We have schools mostly in Arizona, which is where we started, in Tucson, Arizona, but we have schools in Louisiana, here in Texas, and Washington, D.C. Texas is our big growth area. It's the new frontier for BASIS. We have 6 schools right now. We'll quickly grow to 8 schools, incrementally then to 11 schools, and then after that our plan is to open 6 or 7 schools a year for the next 5 years after that. And a lot of those schools will be in North Texas. Our first school in North Texas is here in Benbrook, because we have solid philanthropic support that said to us, we want many schools to be across North Texas, but we want the first one to be in Fort Worth. So we listened to the philanthropic support that we have, and so we pledged that our first school here in North Texas would be in Fort Worth, but after that we'll go throughout the North Texas area. You can see how our growth has increased exponentially for a while. We've slowed down the last couple of years, but we started with 56 kids in 1998 at BASIS Tucson at a synagogue in Tucson. We moved into an office space next to a mortuary a couple of years later, but still downtown, serving predominantly low and middle income students in Tucson. We were told back then, well, it's one thing to do great things with students when you're in arguably the worst area of town, serving left behind kids who would otherwise go to one of the worst performing districts in the entire universe. But it would be a whole other thing. You couldn't actually do that if you were in Scottsdale, the top performing district in Arizona. And so we took that as a challenge, and our second school is in Scottsdale. So we had 2 very different schools at the beginning of our evolution as a charter management organization. And from there, we've expanded significantly and have schools serving every possible demographic, schools from very low percentage of students on free reduced lunch to very high percentage of students on free reduced lunch. Places that are very rural, like our school in Prescott, or quasi-rural, like our school in Mesa, and urban schools like BASIS Phoenix Central, BASIS DC, and the like. We also have, not shown here, private schools and international schools. These are the public charter schools. I won't go through each of these things, but we will hit on these in more detail in some of the follow-up sessions that we have, some of the virtual ones where we'll actually kind of go one column by another. But I'll pick one kind of randomly in each. As I said, the BASIS Charter School curriculum, starting on the far left, is an AP-infused curriculum. It's been built on the AP program at the high school level. All of our students have to take 7 AP courses in order to graduate, have to take 6 AP exams, and have to pass at least one of those with a 3. That's the bare minimum. You cannot graduate with a BASIS diploma without passing at least one AP exam with a 3. As I said, I think last year, 13.7, our average student takes and passes 13.7 AP exams before they even get to their senior year. But we are a place for students and families who want a heavy AP curriculum in high school. It's not to say you can't come to us in primary school and continue in middle school and then opt for a different high school experience. 25% of our students leave us after middle school, are with us all the way K through 8, and then leave after middle school to go to different high schools. But 75%, and I wish it was higher than that, I wish it was 80 or 90% of our families choose us, 75% choose us for their little ones because they know what's coming down the road. This AP-infused environment. How do we get regular, average, normal kids? Because, to be honest, in a traditional district school or in a private school, it is not regular, average, normal kids who are taking AP classes. It's the cream of the crop. It's the honors kids. But we take everybody. How do we get them ready? We have a lot of elements to our secret sauce, but one of them that's also really important for you to understand is that we have high-stakes exams in the middle school. When you have high-stakes middle school exams, that creates the conditions under which your kids are ready for real high-stakes exams in high school. And those exams at the high school level, the AP exams, count for college placement. They also count for a student's overall GPA in very significant ways in our schools. We prepare kids for the stress of that by introducing them to high stakes in the middle school. So as an example of that, we have comprehensive exams at the end of each year, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. The students take comps, we call them comps, pre-comps at the semester, comps at the end of the year, in every one of their academic courses, and they have to pass those comprehensive exams in order to go on to the next grade level. Something like 95% of our kids pass all of their comps and do very well on them, but there are some number of students, depending upon the school and the situation, probably between 5 and 10% on an annual basis, students who have to repeat the year in order to go on to the next grade level. That's a really important core concept for us. You have to master the material at a grade level in order to be ready for the next grade level. Those comprehensive exams are also worth 50% of a student's overall grade in the middle school. So they see immediately, this is a test that's really meaningful to me. And that can be a stressful experience. You get that stress out, you get the kids you get the kids used to that level of stress in the middle school, and then they can handle it when they get to high school. And then they can handle it when they go to college, and as we all know, went to college, you might have that professor where 100% of your grade is based upon one thing, one paper, one test, one seminar at the end. And so the kids are prepared for that, and they're prepared to deal with stress throughout their lives because we start having them deal with it in small ways when it's not as important as it is later on in life. For the blue column, we have this is a lot at the bottom there, supportive collaborative student hours. Because we offer such a rigorous education, we put a lot of money, frankly, a lot of resources, and a lot of time behind student support. Students have so much support within our systems, whether it's office hours with their teachers, whether it's before school time, whether it's extra time at lunch in the courses that they're studying, with meeting with the dean or other students in small groups, with tons and tons of student support. We do student support, I would argue, better than probably any school that you've ever considered. We do that because we don't want to lose students. We want our students, we push them hard, but we want them to all achieve. And we know that they can't all just achieve on their own. We need to work with them in a very intense way early on and through middle school so they can be successful in our curriculum. And we have a great track record of doing that. I talked a bit about some of these things, but from the gray column, I'll talk about the communication journal. The CJ, as our students call it, and as is known in our organization, is a planner that the students have. So we're very detailed about teaching fundamental study skills for our students. They learn that at a young age. So the students have an agenda that they have to write all of their assignments on. You as a parent in the primary school have to sign off on that every single night. So the kid has to come home, show you, here's what's due tomorrow. So again, you can't go onto an online system and see that. Instead, your kid has to come and show that to you. And so you say to your student, hey, you didn't show me your CJ, let me see your CJ. So the kid brings you a CJ, you can see they've written down all their assignments, they have to check them off, and then you sign as a parent. That's also where the teachers give you feedback and write little notes to you and stuff like that. So you get that on a daily basis, but it's not the teacher going directly to you around the kid, it's the teacher going through the student to you. As they get into middle school, you are less and less involved in that CJ. It becomes a real planner for the students and how they organize their life, and less of something that you check on a nightly basis. And then when they get to high school, it tends to start to fall away from many of our students, but by then, they're really good at time management. They don't need a device like a CJ anymore, and a planner in order to schedule all of their time and their homework assignments. Finally, I'll talk about the diversity of our schools. It's something that if you tour another BASIS school, you're immediately hit right in the face by how ridiculously diverse our schools are. We are an incredibly attractive option for first and second generation immigrant families. Whether they're coming from South Asia, Eastern Europe, Mexico City, South America, we are a place where families are looking for what they had as a kid in their country of origin. And they look out into the general educational options, and they can only find that, if they can, in private schools that they can't afford. And so we have tons and tons of first and second generation families in our schools. As a result, our schools are ridiculously diverse. And it's not uncommon for our schools to be 30% Hispanic, 30% Asian Indian, 30 to 40% Hispanic or African American, depending upon the city in which it's in, 30% Asian Indian, 30% white. So it's a wide variety, and Asian Indian, as you know, is kind of a catch-all for a lot of different races and ethnicities. So it is probably a core reason that families come to us, is because of the diversity that we offer. They love the fact that their kids are going to school with this melting pot of America, where they're learning about ethnic celebrations and holidays and stuff in a real meaningful way. I'll go through this pretty quickly, but we are, as I said before, the top, if not one of the top, if not the top, charter school organizations in the country. We are traditionally at or near the top in public high school rankings, in primary school rankings, and in middle school rankings, year after year. Our college entrance exams, and these are the averages across our network, are extremely high. So we have an average last year of 1389 on the SAT, higher typically than any public district school or magnet school or charter school that we compete with, and usually higher than all of the private schools in the areas in which we operate. Occasionally there's a school, Harvard Westlake in California, that's a little bit higher than this. I haven't looked at Fort Worth Country Day, but occasionally one of the private country day schools will be a little bit higher than us. But again, they have admissions criteria, and whatever the tuition is, $20,000 to $40,000 tuition price points, and very high ACT scores as well. Our kids get into top tier colleges and universities, and when you're thinking about what to do with your kindergartner, it's kind of a silly thing to think about whether they're going to get into Harvard, Yale, or Princeton. But sending your student to a K-12 program that has a track record of getting kids into the most selective colleges and universities is a smart thing to do for the future. You can see our AP pass rate is almost 90%. That's compared with a national pass rate of 60%. But again, that's as 100% of our students in here are taking these examinations. Whereas in the bulk of the country that has a 60% pass rate, it's still only the best of the best are even taking AP exams. You can see that success rates across all areas. So it's not in one STEM or humanities area. In Arizona, kind of the joke is Arizona actually does very well as a state on AP tests. We have one of the highest percentages of penetration of AP test takers. We have some of the highest AP scores in the entire country in Arizona. But if you remove BASIS schools from that, we drop down to among the very worst in the country. So we disproportionately, wherever we operate, we have a disproportionate number of AP scholars, whether at the national level or at the state level. When your kids are 15 years old, 14 and 15 years old, they take a test called the OECD, which compares your students on international levels with their peers. And you can see that our students compare quite favorably to the United States and to other OECD countries. We hold a very high bar for ourselves of we want to be not just the best school in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but we want all of our schools in the Dallas-Fort Worth area to be among the best schools in the entire world. And finally, bringing it back to Texas, this is all 3rd grade through 8th grade. We have STAR results, again, among some of the best in the state. So quickly, there's a lot of slides here that I'll go through pretty quickly. How do we do it? What do we do to achieve these results? If we first talk a little bit about kindergarten and 1st grade, we are places of purposeful play. We have lots of recess time. We have lots of running around and having good times time. There's lots of play time. There's lots of fun with concepts. Kids love our primary schools, and parents love the feel of the primary school. We have no school uniforms. We encourage students, within reasonable decorum standards, to dress as they will and to come as they are, and that leads, to an environment with purple hair and fun. So there's a lot of purple-haired fun in kindergarten and 1st through 4th grade. When you get to 1st through 3rd grade, this is where that 2-teacher model comes in, and in 4th grade sometimes, depending upon the school. This is where we have the 2-teacher model, and you can see it happening there, where one teacher is a subject knowledge expert, and the other teacher is an expert in child psychology and child education. Your students then go, like they would in middle school, from class to class. So you don't just have 2 teachers that are the same teachers all day long as a 1st grader. You go to a math classroom with a math teacher, a science classroom with a science teacher, an English classroom with an English teacher, a history classroom with a history teacher, a Mandarin classroom with a Mandarin teacher. So you're going into each of these classes and you're being taught by specific teachers in these disciplines. All along, so your kids are physically moving to those classes too, which is good for movement throughout the day. All along, a learning expert teacher is going with them. And she has a cart. He or she has a cart. So it kind of looks cute when you watch it, like in the hallways. It's just a teacher pushing a cart, and then a bunch of little 1st graders walking behind her, sometimes a little loud, sometimes quietly, going from one class to the next, transitioning from one class to the next. So In each of these classes, again, they have a subject-specific expert and then their homeroom teacher that is mobile. We focus a lot in that 1 through 3 on time management, on creating good, solid foundational skills, because if you're not a little nervous about your kid's ability to do some of the high-level work that I talked about in the rigor of the high school, you should be. But we are the ones that set that foundation. We ask you to just send your kids to our schools in the primary school, and we will do the hard work and create the magic that gets them ready for middle school and high school. We have tons of recess. We traditionally have more recess. Our school day is a little bit longer than is typical, but we end up having more recess than most parents are accustomed to when looking at other schools. As I said, the middle school grades are these bridge years where we create this AP preparatory curriculum that builds on those fundamentals, starts introducing more of an emphasis on objective examinations, because there are no high stakes exams for our kids in primary school. So where that gets introduced is in middle school. And then in high school, they take some of their, we think of high school, upper school as starting in 8th grade, the transition from 5 grading periods that we do in the middle school. So we think of our middle school as 5 through 7, our high school or upper school is 8 through 12, because students start taking APs in 8th grade. They start fulfilling their high school credits in 8th grade, because all of our students are able to graduate from high school after 11th grade if they like. They've fulfilled all of the basic high school graduation requirements by 11th grade. Some detail here that you can read about when we send you the slideshow. Lots of electives built into our system. Student choice, being able to choose your own adventure in high school, is important to us. We do have core requirements, but in addition to those core requirements, there are lots of ability for students to choose and to become the type of BASIS student that they want to be. BASIS is not just for math and science geeks, although we certainly have a good reputation in those STEM fields, but we're a place for poets and musicians and artists and writers as well. The senior year is a special year. It's the culmination of the BASIS K through 12 experience. Our students do have a college counseling class, so again, a big reason, a way that we get our kids into great colleges and universities is by hiring exceptional college counselors, having very low ratios, and then having those college counselors teach an actual course to the students that they're in every single day in the first trimester of their senior year. So we're working intensely with them through that college application process. Students are also taking post-AP courses and capstone courses. And then those who wish, and the vast majority of them do, for the 3rd trimester of the school, do a senior project. It's a self-directed independent project. They're working with an external advisor as well as an internal faculty member. They do an internship off campus. Many of them, obviously it's been different during COVID, but will be normal next year. We've had to get rid of the off-campus internships and stuff like that, but excited for those to come back next year. Many of them travel internationally, so it's a great experience for high school students. Some examples of senior projects from this year. High-level research, this kind of stuff. I mean, look, I had a boneheaded Yahoo boy who is now going to be a senior next year. If you had told me how successful is your kid going to be in high school when he was in middle school or primary school, I would have thought he'd be a decent student, but I never would have thought he'd be a kid that could do something like this. This is because of the very hard work that we put in to get kids to be the sort of students who can write a paper in their senior year of high school called Deep Recurrent Learning for Bayesian State Estimation of Autonomous 6th Degree of Freedom Optical Lunar Lander. I mean, I don't know what that means. I really don't. Aaron, do you want to say a little bit about the actual?
So again, in addition to the educational program and the curriculum, we make a very substantial investment in the facilities as well. As Peter briefly mentioned at the beginning, we're pretty far into this site. We haven't closed on the site yet. We're just kind of finalizing the financing, which we think will be done basically the first week of July. But I would give this at least a 90% probability of coming to fruition for the next school year. So we've done, in fact, we've done so much work on it. We've already invested a lot of architectural design, due diligence on the property, and started the city's plan review process. So once we close on the financing and on the property, we'll be able to break ground pretty quickly, probably within 30 days or so. But the phase one, the primary school, will be about 43,000 square feet. As Peter mentioned, it'll be grades K through 5. That facility could have about 720 students or so in grades K through 5, opening K through 4. It does have multi-purpose space, a cafeteria, has great outdoor space, including a playground, an outdoor court, and indoor space as well in case we have bad weather. In addition to the normal classrooms, there's art, music, and science classrooms as well. And again, we'll probably break ground on this site late July, and that's about a $20 million investment. And then a few years later, we'll add phase 2 for grades 6 through 12. Here's a floor plan. As I said, the architects have already been busy. We've already reviewed this plan with the city. You can see all the classrooms, and the music and art classrooms are the ones in purple. And then the green spaces are common areas, such as the multi-purpose space. So the two up top are primarily where we serve meals, but they can be used for other things as well. And then we've got an indoor court, and this smaller indoor space is actually just an exercise room. So even if we have bad weather, we still have ample space for activities like that, PE. And you can see there's outdoor space. The shape of the building essentially forms a courtyard, so our younger kids generally do outdoor PE there, and there's a separate playground for them, and there's a second playground here for the older students, and then an outside court as well. So that's the basic floor plan, again about 43,000 square feet. And here's some renderings of the site.
And when we build it, the front is here, so then you can see through the front, and then you can see the front at the top of that picture, so then the whole middle courtyard is stripped.
So it was very quick, but well, you know, we plan on being here for a long time. We're going to make a major investment in that.
And we're super excited to have Benbrook be our first home in Fort Worth. So again, we knew we wanted to be in Fort Worth for quite some time. And this is our first informational meeting that we've held, but it's not the first meeting that we've had with prospective parents generally, and not the first time that we've reached out to see whether Fort Worth is the right community for us to come into for our first North Texas part of our expansion. We're going to continue to do things on a weekly basis, and certainly you guys do not need to come out on a weekly basis, but what we're going to encourage you to do is to, we're starting to create the army of parents who tell their friends, who tell their friends, who tell their friends, who can fill this school. We would love to be able to offer 2 to 3 sections at every grade level in the first year. We can just do 1 or 2 sections, but it's a more vibrant, lively school if we can get to 2 or 3 sections. And that's largely going to be by word of mouth and by you guys discovering, reading more about us, learning about us, and realizing this is a great school for your family. And if you have that feeling about it, then telling your friends. And getting them to come to some of our prospective parent virtual coffee chats and information sessions. So we'll do information sessions at the library or another place like this on about a monthly basis, and then on a weekly basis we'll do Q&As and coffee tops and stuff like that. So that is all I have for you.